Welcome to the Nerdstalgic podcast with your host, the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm. Nerdstalgic with the Ginger Bookworm.
More than anything, sweet 13-year-old novice witch Kiki wants to leave the nest to find independence and a place in the world, but fresh starts are always challenging. However, even though her broom flying skills still need honing, Kiki has faith in herself and her abilities. No matter what, the girl is determined to reach her full potential. As a result, Kiki zooms off on her mother's broomstick to the gorgeous port city of Kyoto, accompanied by Jin, her bright-eyed feline confidant. Now the sky is the limit. As the bubbly newcomer learns how to handle responsibility, will Kiki get the chance to spread her wings and make her dreams come true? Kiki's delivery service. Howdy beans, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Nerdstalgic podcast. I'm your host, Luke the Human. Hope you're doing well, hope you're all good, as per usual. As you heard in the absolutely wonderful introduction done by yours truly, today's topic is going to be the 1989 classic Studio Ghibli movie. Yes, we're doing Ghibli again. It's been a while. We finally get around to back doing another Ghibli movie. We're going to be doing Kiki's delivery service today. But before we get into that, I want to do a little bit of housekeeping because I like to keep my house nice and clean. So, if you are listening to this on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. It helps me out immensely. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Nerdstalgic_pod to be kept up to date on everything and anything that I am doing. Both places will help me out immensely. And if you listen to this on Spotify, don't forget to give me a star rating. It also helps me out immensely. So all of that, if you can do that before we begin today, I will love you forevers and evers. So today, like I said, we're going to be talking about Kiki's delivery service. It's been a while since I've done anything Ghibli related. The last thing I actually did for Studio Ghibli was my review for My Neighbor Totoro, which is absolutely a wonderful movie. If you haven't listened to My Neighbor Totoro, if you haven't watched it, go do yourself a favor. Especially if you need a smile, if you need a reason to be happy, if you need something to cheer you up quickly, My Neighbor Totoro is the perfect film for that. But I did that for Christmas Day. That was my Christmas Day special episode. It did really, really well, and people seemed to enjoy it, and it was a lot of fun to watch that movie. So that was the last one I did for season 3. But I've also covered Grave of the Fireflies, which was a very heart-wrenching and tragic, but very powerful movie that everybody should watch, but should only ever watch once. And I don't want to get into it because today's meant to be a very happy topic with Kiki. But if you know, you know. If you haven't watched it, I recommend it. Just go in with a lot of tissues and with an open mind. Best thing I can say. But I've also covered Castle in the Sky, Laputa, which was absolutely wonderful. Very, very much the sense of Atlantis meets Indiana Jones, which was fantastic. And my favourite of all the Ghibli movies that I've watched so far, my absolute favourite, and the one I keep going back to, is Nausicaa Valley of the Wind. Now, I've heard rumblings that there is potentially Miyazaki thinking about doing a sequel. Don't know if that's true or not. But if he does, I'd love it. I still want to get around to reading the manga. Nausicaa was the first ever anime sort of Eastern animated movie I've ever seen that actually made me want to go read the anime. Being dyslexic, the anime really confuses me because I was like drilled in of how you're meant to read a book, and then manga is completely the other way around. So yeah, I'm so invested in Nausicaa in that world that I want to read the manga to get a lot more out of it, because apparently there's so much more in the manga than there is actually in the film. So yeah, I want to do that eventually. But I have had an incredible sort of journey and even relationship with my own soul and my own being on this journey with Studio Ghibli. It's been an absolute wonder, and I'm so glad that today I get to have the opportunity to talk to you all about the next movie in this series. So for anybody that doesn't know, anybody who's jumping in straight here at Kikis delivery service, as I mentioned to those movies prior, I am watching all the Studio Ghibli movies in chronological order, from Nausicaa all the way up to The Boy and the Heron, which is the latest one that came out last year. Currently, I'm just finishing the 80s with Kiki, and then in the 90s we have Papa Rosso and the likes of that. So that is, for anybody new, this whole sort of Studio Ghibli journey that I am on. And I love it. I do. If you could see my face right now, if I was doing a video, you would just see a huge Cheshire grin on my face, because I love this studio. I'm absolutely fall in love with every movie they make. I just fall deeply, madly in love with everything about it. And it's just an honor to be able to watch them, to be given access to these worlds that they create, especially. And I always do this with the prior episodes. If you haven't listened to the prior episodes, please do go back and give them a listen. But one thing I like to do with them at the end, once I finish my review, is I like to look at the years that these films were coming out and what other animated movies was coming out at the same time. And so far, what the themes, the topics, the concepts, the ideas, everything that Ghibli was doing at the times of those films coming out, nothing would compete with them. I haven't found anything that is as sort of poignant and as sort of themes and topic heavy and character driven as what Ghibli was doing when they first started doing the magic that they have created. And it took a while for Disney to catch up. It took a while for Pixar to catch up, and DreamWorks. I'd go as far as say in the 80s, the only thing I could think of that gets close to the dark and the emotional themes, and I would say this for me personally as a fan, was the Transformers the animated movie. I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't watched it. I am planning on reviewing that movie for the podcast eventually, but that is a very hard-hitting movie, especially if you're a fan. You grew up watching the Transformers TV show, and then you watch the movie. You're like, oh, really hits you in the heart. So that was probably say the only film I would say emotionally that kind of got close. But Ghibli has always been a trendsetter. Has always been the one that has just done their own thing, but done it beautifully, done it wonderfully. And yeah, I can just gush about them all day, but I'm not going to, because I'm here to talk about Kiki's delivery service, and that is what I'm going to do. So enough waffling, let's get into it. So Kirsten Dunst does the voice of Kiki in the English version. I have been listening to the English versions. I did watch the English version of Grave of the Fireflies, and then I went back and I'll be honest with you, I couldn't watch it all. This is something that I did in my own time after I watched it. I think 2 months went past since I did Grave. And then I was like, you know what? I went onto YouTube and I watched certain scenes in Japanese. And when I tell you they hit harder in Japanese than they do in English, they hit harder. And it was emotional. It really, really was. But I have been listening to Ghibli in the English dubs. And I love that the actors that they get, actors that you wouldn't even think that would be in Ghibli, appear, you know. So for this one, Kirsten Dunst, who I am a fan of, does the voice of Kiki, has got me excited. As for the production and development of this movie, I'm going to read my notes on what they did for the production. One thing I do want to mention quickly for anybody that is new to my Ghibli adventures, as I mentioned, I am dyslexic. And I do struggle with the Japanese names. So if I pause or stumble or sort of pronounce any of the names, I do apologize. I really, really do. I make no offense. It's just the fact if I try my best, but I struggle. So just bear with me. You know, we'll get through this together, basically. Right. So I'm going to take a swig of water to cleanse the palate. Right. Because this production, this is quite fascinating. So, here we go. Right. In 1987, Group Fudusha asked Kidenoto's publishers for the rights to adapt Kideno's novel into a feature film directed by either Hayao Miyazaki or Isao Takahata. of Studio Ghibli. However, both of the chosen directors were busy working on My Neighbor Totoro and Grave of the Fireflies, respectively. Miyazaki accepted the role of producer while the studio continued to search for a director. Near the end of Totoro's production, members of Studio Ghibli were being recruited as senior staff for Kiki's delivery service. The character design position was given to Keiichiro Kondo, who was working with Miyazaki on Totoro. Hiroshi Ono, who would later work on projects such as Jin Ryo, was hired as art director at the request of Kazuo Oga. Miyazaki chose Suno Kabashi as director. Kabashi had worked with Miyazaki on Sherlock Hound. Kiki's Delivery Service was to have been his directorial debut. Studio Ghibli hired Noibikuski Misaki as scriptwriter, but Miyazaki was dissatisfied by the first draft, finding it dry and too divergent from his own vision of the film. Since the novel was based in a fictional country in Northern Europe, Miyazaki and senior staff went to research landscapes and other elements of the setting. Their main stops were Stockholm and Visby on the Swedish island of Gotland. The architect of Kyoko is also based on the design of buildings from other cities such as Amsterdam, Paris, and San Francisco. Upon their return to Japan, Miyazaki and the creative team worked on conceptual art and character designs. Miyazaki began signifyingly modifying the story, creating new ideas and changing existing ones. Meijo non Takabuin, the original children's book by Kadono that the movie was based on, is very different from Miyazaki's finished film. Komodo's novel is more episodic, consisting of small stories about various people and incidents Kiki encounters while making deliveries. Kiki overcomes many challenges in the novel based on her good heart and consequently expands her circle of friends. She faces no particular traumas or crises. Many of the more dramatic elements, such as Kiki getting attacked by many crows, losing her powers, or the airship incident at the film's climax, are not present in the original story. In order to more clearly illustrate the themes of struggling with independence and growing up in the film, Miyazaki intended to have Kiki face tougher challenges and create a more potent sense of loneliness. One such challenge is Kiki's sudden loss of ability to fly. This event is only loosely paralleled in the novel, in which Kiki's broom breaks and Millie requires her to fix it. Miyazaki remarked, "As movies always create a more realistic feeling, Kiki will suffer stronger setbacks and loneliness than in the original." Kadono was unhappy with the changes made between the book and film to the point that the project was in danger of being shelved at the screenplay stage. Miyazaki and Toshino Suzuki, a producer of Ghibli, went to the author's home and invited her to the film's studio. After her visit to the studio, Kadono decided to let the project continue. Miyazaki finished the rough draft of the screenplay in June 1988 and presented it in July 1988. It was at this time that Miyazaki revealed that he had decided to direct the film because he had influenced the project so much. Kiki's Delivery Service was originally intended to be a 60-minute special, but expanded into a feature film running 102 minutes after Miyazaki completed storyboarding and scripting it. The word Takahonobin, I feel like I'm pronouncing that wrong, literally means home fast mail. In the Japanese title is a trademark of Yamato Transport, which stylized it in the non-Japanese language as Takubin, though it is used today as a pseudonym for Takubin home delivery mail. While Yamato Transport sponsored the film, it initially did not approve of the uses of its trademark, since it was used by Kanono without permission. However, the success of the film restored relations between both her and Yamato Transport. The film had a produced budget of 800 million yen, or $6.9 million, making it one of the most expensive anime films upon then, along with Akira in 1988 and Royal Space Force The Wings of Hana Esme in 1987. I do apologise then for any of the stumbles or for any of the moments where I couldn't pronounce anything. I do give it a go. And if you've listened to any of my Ghibli reviews, whenever I get to this stage, when I talk about production, I do give it the whole Scouts try. But I will admit, and I will be honest with it, I struggle with English as it is. So having to pronounce names from other cultures, it is a bit difficult, but I give it a go, and that's the main thing. And that's what any takeaway anybody should take away from whatever I do is that if you give it a go and you try your best, it's not so bad, you know. So thank you for being patient with me there. But I am quite interested when I was actually putting together the notes for the this episode. What I tend to do for a bit of background, sort of behind the scenes, behind the curtain, for anybody who's interested, whenever I come to write my notes for any episode that I do, whether it be for video game, for a movie, book, whatever, I always lay them out in bullet points, and I'll set them from the introduction. And then once I've watched the film or whatever, I will then do a second, which will all just be notes for the actual review itself. And as I was writing down my notes of what I wanted to talk about and certain things I wanted to mention, like, you know, going back through my world of Ghibli and sort of talking about what I've done before and that sort of thing, I was going to talk about the themes and sort of the deeper idea behind Ghibli. And I was going to do the sort of the themes of this movie. But then I thought, I haven't watched it myself yet because I haven't watched this movie as of doing this, and also I'm only going off what people have told me. I've had a lot of friends and a lot of people that I told that I was going to watch Kiki next, and they've all told me, "Oh, it's great, and you know, it's wonderful, magical, lovely." So I thought I'm not going to talk about the themes, and I'm going to leave that till later to the actual review, and then we can sit down and we can analyze it there. So this introduction is going to be a bit shorter because I've had to get rid of that part from the notes. Otherwise, this part would have been a bit longer. But yeah, so that is everything that I want to talk about. I'm very excited. I'm very interested to see where this goes. I've been told it's quite magical. I've been told, like I said, it's quite wonderful. So without further ado, the introduction's done. Talk about the developments done. I've gushed enough about Studio Ghibli. Let's get into it, shall we? So I've just finished watching Kiki's Delivery Service, and absolutely, it's a gorgeous film, which is not really a surprise because it's Studio Ghibli. I'm not surprised. I knew as soon as I put it in, I would feel just ever since I watched Amelie, and I know I'm going back to Amelie, but I have been trying my best to recover that sense of childhood, to recover that feeling, that essence of nostalgia, of feeling young, to feel like a child again. And these Ghibli movies have been a fantastic sort of like escape and exploration into being a child again. I don't know if it's because I'm autistic or what, but these films, especially Kiki, it's not a sensory overload. I feel so at ease as soon as it comes on, the music begins, and the music in this is gorgeous. Again, it has to be expected for Ghibli. There's no sensory overload. There's no sort of big bombastic in your face. Everything is calm. Everything is pleasant. Everything is soothing. Even when it is sad, the music is calm, or to a point where you're upset but you're comforted at the same time. I can't explain it, and I wish I had a music degree where I could properly convey what it is I'm trying to say. But everything about Ghibli so far has been a calming, wonderful, and nostalgic experience for me, because it's allowed me to go back in time to myself when I was younger, when I watched cartoons and I watched animated movies, and I would just get lost in them. Not that that doesn't happen anymore as an adult when I watch modern animated movies, but these films, because they're hand drawn, because character development is front and center, they're not trying to show off. It is basically, no matter what film that you watch, whether it be one of the newer ones or I would imagine a lot of the older ones that I've watched, it's just calming, just relaxing. And my initial thoughts of this movie is that it's beautiful. It's absolutely wonderful. It's a beautiful film, both in context, character, and story, but also in just the way it looks and the animation style. And you can see how much love and effort went into creating this world, trying to take the concept of Kiki from the original book source and translating that into visual, into a medium of film. Again, I haven't read the book, but from looking at a few stills from the book, they've done a fantastic job of translating it to screen, and it works really, really well. But you also have the wonderful message that this film has, as every Ghibli movie has had so far, in my experience, and what I've been told is a common thing going ahead, is that the wonderful message about maturity in this film, about growing up, about being sort of having confidence in yourself, having self doubt, the idea of that growing up, having to deal with the real world, having to get a job, having to deal with having money, being good at your job, trying your best not to overwhelm yourself, get into make no new people, new friends, new settings. You know, you've got to move out of your mum's house, got to go move to a new city that you don't know anybody, don't know anything. It's very scary, and it's that whole idea. Even now at 26, I'm still struggling with. I struggle with it daily. Even though that I work and volunteer, I still feel like imposter syndrome constantly. So to think Kiki, yes, she's a witch, but she's still a 13-year-old girl in the big city on her own. She doesn't know anybody. She doesn't know anything outside of what she has been had when she's been supported by a family in a small little village, and now she's in a big city. It's very, how can I explain it? It's very much on the side of growing up and maturity and being an adult while still being so young. And the message here is wonderful. And I'll get into the themes of the film near to the end. But my first initial thoughts is it's very wonderful, which is to be expected from a Ghibli movie. They have once again done an incredible job. Now, I will say, despite all that, even though I enjoyed it, I wouldn't say it was any better than what I've already seen. Now, that might seem a bit sacrilege to some people, because I know for a lot of people this is their favourite. I still very much like Kiki, and I'll talk about Kiki and I'll talk about Gigi and the rest of the story in a minute. But to me, still at the top is Nausicaa, and then I would then go Cast in the Sky, Totoro, and I would want to put a Happy Movie above Grave, but just because how powerful of a film Grave is, it's above. So it's still in line of sort of chronological. So far, nothing's topped Nausicaa for me. Nausicaa is still the pinnacle. I still listen to that soundtrack all the time, but it's still a wonderful film. Like if I was doing that thing that YouTubers do, where they rank it from like A plus to like D and an E, these would still be like A plus. Like I would still keep these very high up. So even though it's not my overall favourite, I still enjoyed it, and it's still very, very good, and it's still worth checking out. So moving on to my thoughts on Kiki. I am a big love. A big love? I have a big love. There you go, that makes more sense. I have a big love of witches and witchcraft. I am currently writing a book on witches and witchcraft, and how that witches in general are really misunderstood. That the whole idea and concept, and I'm on about in the real world now, not in fantasy, but the real world idea and concept of what a witch was and how they were prosecuted is very much unfair, and that what a real witch is. And I have a lot of friends who do practice in witchcraft, and I know through doing my research for my book, I've been in contact with people that do practice it, that witches and witchcraft is a lot more homely. And it's nothing like what is done in fairy tales. So I have a big love of it. So to find out that this movie had a female witch lead was very wonderful. And the whole idea behind the movie and Kiki's journey was just finding her purpose. She's become 13 years old. That is at the age where a witch leaves home. And they leave home to go find their purpose. And on the way, Kiki meets another witch, and she's very stuck up and snooty, of like, well, I've almost finished my training. I can predict the future. What can you do? And it sort of Kiki's like, well, I don't know. I haven't decided who I am or what I'm doing yet. Which is again is the same for a lot of people. I get it many times myself where I know what I want to be in life or where I want life to take me, but then I meet other people who are younger than me or my age, who have already found their purpose, already found what they want to be or who they are. So it's a common thing. It's that common theme as you go through the story of like Kiki still doubting herself of who is she, what does she want to do, and even when she finds her sort of role, which is a delivery service, which is what she wants to do, which is what she loves to do, she's still trying her best to figure out um, who she is and what that means for her. It's a wonderful journey that you go on with Kiki through this story. It's not a long story, it's about an hour and 40 minutes, but it flies by so quickly. And you get to see Kiki being the child at first, and as she quickly starts to grow up and takes responsibility and tries her best to make a name for herself in this town where she doesn't really know anybody. Luckily enough, she meets her a lovely lady who owns a bakery, and the lady lets her stay there and lets her use the phone for a delivery service, and she meets new people and she slowly starts to come out of her shell. But there is that self-doubt again because she was young of like, can I do this, am I doing the right thing, and then she's meeting new people, and this really affects her in the story and affects her powers and her belief. And again, I'll get into that when we get into the themes. But it's very much this journey that you go on with Kiki is it's a wonderful one, wonderful setting, but it is a story at heart of maturity. Of from Kiki, Kiki's not the same person she was at the start of the movie to who she is at the end. She's still wonderful, unique, and lovely, and full of magic and wonder, but she's a lot comfortable in her new position. She's a lot more, how can I explain it? A lot more self-confident in who she is as a person, in who she is as a witch, who she is as a friend to the people that are around her. And one thing that I love that Studio Ghibli does, which I would like to see other animated movies or movies in general do this, which is done in movies, but it's not done as much. Basically, at the end of this film, when it ends, you have the credits roll, and then you still have things going on in the background, and you get it's kind of like a sequel, or even like a continuation of like, okay, the story's ended here, but this is what goes on, and you get to see Kiki. She's getting a lot more confident. She's now got more friends. She's hanging out with people her age. She's also doing a lot more delivery. She sends a message back to her parents to let her parents know, look, I'm doing well, I'm fine, I'm happy, I will see you all soon. It's very loving, and it kind of wraps up the story nicely. So Kiki is a character, very solid character, and again, female-led story. I love it. I mentioned this when I was talking about Nausicaa, when I was talking about Laputa, is the fact of I was already pre-told going into Ghibli that a lot of their stories are going to be female-led, and that was one of the things that got me so excited. And still, just now, it's true. I'm going through the story, all these films, and it's female-led, and it's so fantastic to see. It is. It's such a fresh air. I was getting so bored of male-led stories. Of like, I just want to see women kick ass and tell stories and tell unique stories, and it's been so wonderful so far. So strong, powerful, young female character, witches and witchcraft, and all going through maturity and growing up, and what it's like to grow up, and what it's like to start a new beginning, and all that jazz. Absolutely wonderful. 10 out of 10. I love Kiki as a character. Then you've got Gigi, who is her cat, who I love. He's also voiced wonderfully by the late great Phil Hartman. If you don't know who Phil Hartman is, he is in The Simpsons. He's like, "Hi, I'm Troy McClure." He was also in Small Soldiers. He was in Third Rock from the Sun. He was on SNL. He was in Jingle All the Way, Ted. where he flirts with Arnold Schwarzenegger's wife and all that. Is the creepy guy, but he's a fantastic actor, and I didn't know he was in this film. And him playing Gigi, it's absolutely incredible, because Gigi is the character. He reminds me of Marvin the robot from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Is in the fact of he's kind of like Gigi is the personification of Kiki in the way of he is kind of like Jiminy Cricket. He is her conscious. He is her soul, sort of leading her through life. Of be like, well, maybe we should do this. Maybe we should do that. Are you sure that this is something that you want to do, Kiki? Is this sure the direction that we should go in? And it's that very much the fact of it's her maturity, her youngness, her childness, her imagination, but also her soul, her inner being, kind of like a Jiminy Cricket sort of character, speaking out, being like, are you sure? Are you happy in doing this? Is this something that you want to do? Is this where we want to go? It's a very wonderful, and he reminds me of Marvin because there are times where he moans, but it's like a funny sort of moan. He's like, "Oh, see, I don't know what's so good about the sea. It's just a giant puddle." Um, and he's constantly moaning like, "Can we just go home? It's too busy. There's too many people." And you got Kiki constantly pushing, like, "No, we're going to stay here. We're going to make a life for ourselves here." And he, at first, is very much the fact of, "No, I don't want to stay here." And in a way, you could say that in itself is Kiki's inner monologue of like, on the outer side, she is very full of confidence, full of bravado. They're like, oh, we're going to settle in, we're going to do fantastic, everything's going to be great. But then you have Gigi, who is very much on sort of her inner true thoughts. Her sort of like, are we sure that we want to be here? This is something that we want to do. Are we brave enough? Are we confident enough? Can we do this delivery service? What if we mess up? And eventually in the story, again, potential spoilers. So if you haven't watched the film, you know, stop listening now, and come back later. But there is the moment in the film where Kiki, she loses her powers, where she loses all her magic. She can't fly, and to her, not being able to fly, she's lost that spirit. She loses that want and drive to, like, she can't do the delivery service anymore because the whole point of the delivery service was that she used to fly on her broom. Now that she can't fly on a broom and she's lost the magic, what is the point? And it's kind of like we see in the story that she's lost her magic, but what you actually see, if you look for it, is her self-confidence. And the reason that comes in with Gigi is the fact of, with also losing her ability to fly, she loses her ability to talk to Gigi. Gigi, it's like he can't understand. He meows, but he's not interested in her. It's basically more like a cat. He comes in, gets his food, leaves, and goes to play with all the other cats. So Gigi loses her friend. She loses her conscience. She loses that ability, that youngness, that basically the maturity. She's now grown up to a point where she can no longer do the magic. She's an adult, a young adult, basically. She's lost all that whim, and lust. And it's this whole film with Kiki and Gigi and I think it's not Toby, Todo, Tombo, but the lad that she meets who's obsessed with flying and is quite infatuated by Kiki. It's a very wonderful story. That's basically what I'm trying to get at, is the fact of the message in this film is so powerful and speaks a lot to me, because like I said, even at 26 I still struggle with that imposter syndrome, that even though that I'm working, and even though even with the podcast, there are many times where I sit there and go, can I do this? Should I be doing this? I feel like an imposter at any moment where I'm at work. I generally feel like someone, the police or somebody's going to knock the door and be like, here you go, son, come on back to school. You were meant to be at school like an hour ago, you're late. And then I'm going to get to school and I'm going to get told off by teachers. It's a fear that we all have. I feel like a child surrounded by adults. And it's very lovely to watch a story like this, where even though it's portrayed for a young girl, that no matter how old you are, it's a relatable experience that we all have and share, is the fact of, yes, we all struggle with that idea of, are we enough? We all have self doubt. We all get anxious. We all get fear, but we should never allow fear to overtake what we do in life. I've always believed that if there's something in life that scares you, or something in life that gives you immense fear, that is the thing that you should do. Because what you'll find is that if you face the fear, you'll actually find that what it is that you want the most in life is locked behind that fear. And if you run away from it, you've lost out on the opportunity, you've lost out on that potential life path. And you also find out who you truly are when you face your fear. What kind of your character, who you are as a person, and then that grows your confidence. That grows your belief in yourself. And again, I struggle with that with myself all the time. I'm always trying to face my fears. I'm always trying to take every opportunity that's thrown at me and say yes to everything. So it's a normal thing to have that self doubt, and that sort of brings us to the end of the movie. Which again, potential spoilers if you haven't watched it. I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but all the way through the film, from the very, very beginning, as soon as the film starts, when Kiki's lying in a field listening to a radio, all the way to almost very much the end of the story, you will hear in the background, there'll be TVs on or radios on, and it keeps going about this airship. Now, I'm quite tuned up to these sort of things. I notice small little details like this when I'm watching films or video games or TV shows. I notice these things, and my brain just keeps a log of them. We're like, that's interesting. We'll write that down. We'll focus on the film, and then when it keeps coming up, we're like, yeah, we'll note that down. So I knew there was something to do with this airship. I knew that something had to happen with this airship, and I was generally thinking, is it going to be like a Hindenburg sort of situation where this airship comes in, crashes, I was basically waiting for the movie to take a dark turn of like, it's all happy, happy, happy. Is this movie going to just instantly turn dark and then it's going to break my heart and I'm going to burst into tears? Not so much. That doesn't happen. But what does happen is the fact of while Kiki, again, this is sort of spoilers, so prepared. While Kiki's going through sort of the motions of losing her powers, losing her self-worth, really doubting who she is as a person and what that means, she meets one of the old ladies that she delivered to and helped out, and the old lady bakes her a cake, and that a little bit sort of regains herself of her self-worth of like, look, all the work that you have done for so many people and for myself, it means a lot to me, so I wanted to say thank you by giving you a cake. And I want to know when your birthday is, so I can keep giving you cake for your birthday for all the thanks that you have helped done for me and all the things you've done for people. And it's that sort of self gratitude from a stranger, from somebody saying that they're proud of you, that what you're doing is right, that you're on the right path. That guidance. Sometimes, even though you know you're doing well, it's always nice to get that from somebody else. So with getting that self sort of love that she has for herself, knowing that somebody else has noticed it and is congratulating her and giving her a gift and saying, look, you're doing a fantastic job. As a gift, I want to repay you by giving you some cake. It's that self-reaffirming, that self-confidence in herself. And then the airship comes into it. And the airship, a big gust of wind hits the airship loses control, and loads of men are trying their best to pull the airship down, try to keep it grounded, try to hook it to the ground, but the wind's too strong, blows it away. All the men let go apart from one. The young man, the young lad, who is a friend, is holding on to it, and she is like, I've got to go save him. So she runs across town and she's trying to keep up with the balloon, and then she finds a road sweeper and she asks him to borrow her broom. And there's this moment where the music stops, it just goes silent, and she's holding the broom, she's got her eyes closed, and she's really trying to channel her energy, because she even says herself, a witch's flight, a witch's powers come from her soul, come from her spirit, come from who she is inside. And my interpretation of that was very much what I've already said, is in the fact of kind of like magic is belief, and that you have to believe in magic. You have to believe that you can fly. You have to have the confidence that you can take on the world. You have to have that self love and self sort of pride of like, I can do anything. If I wanted to fly, I can fly. If I want to take on the world, I will take on the world. If I want to get that job, get that promotion, get that boy, get that girl, get that new house, get that car, X, Y, and Z. If I want the universe, or if I want magic, or whatever it is that you seek, or whatever you believe in, you have to have that belief. You have to have no doubt at all. It's the fact of it will happen. I know it will happen. It's kind of like manifestation. You have to manifest it. You have to, like, I want that car. So you believe and you think that I will get that car. Then you go to work and you work hard and you meet people. Next thing you know, oh, I now can afford that car. Um, that is obviously a real world sort of situation. But with Kiki, it was very much the fact of having self-doubt, losing her powers, losing her connection to her spirit guide, to her friend Gigi, her companion, her sort of Jiminy Cricket type character, and then getting the cake and getting that self-assurance, getting that sort of self-confidence, and getting that love and pride from somebody else, and then seeing that her friend needs her, and the only person that could really help and save the day and save him is herself. It all culminated into just her. Music went silent internally of like, I can do this, and then she takes off and she stumbles a bit. It's not, she doesn't fly perfectly. Again, it's the fact of she has to relearn it. She has to regain that confidence, not just within herself but within her flying. So she's flying low. She goes really high, and then she loses control. She falls out of the sky. Then she corrects it at just last moment. She's bouncing off buildings. She's kicking her feet off towers so she doesn't hit them. She's regaining that belief in herself that who she is who she is. There's nothing wrong with who she is, and that she's doing the right thing, and that she is trying her best to help her friends and help herself, and everything is going perfectly. She swoops in, helps a friend, saves the day, and she gets that confidence back within herself. And then the movie ends. And then you get the end credits where you get to see what happens next, where she sets up her own business. She's got her own place. She's got her own sign. She's delivering things. She's now got friends. She sent a letter to her family. Like, everything's going well. And even at the end of the film, when they're reading the letter's being read out, and she basically just tells her family, like, there's no need to worry. I'm settling fine here. Things are going well. I think you're going to be very proud of me. And then it ends, and it's a very lovely, heartwarming film, and I just fell in love with that idea of maturity, the idea of Kiki going from a supportive, independent, supportive family, and then she has to become independent, and it's that idea and that story of growth is really incredible. Sort of the themes of this movie. So you've got, like, there are major theme of this film, like I say, is maturity. After leaving her parents who are supportive of her independence, Kiki has to face problems common to adolescents, such as finding a job, seeking acceptance, and taking care of herself. Danny Calilero, I feel like I'm butchering that last name, notes that Kiki's delivery service also explores politeness, stating that the theme stems from a need to interact with others well in an unfamiliar setting. The concept of vulnerability is also examined closely in the film. Critic Mark Shilton notes a scene during Kiki's first night away from her home, where Kiki rushes back to her room and slams the door behind her to avoid being spotted by Fukuno. Fukuno, however, steps outside simply to stretch his arms, and Kiki's bizarrely shy behaviour expresses her youth, vulnerability and isolation. Another theme is the transition from traditional contemporary. Kiki is shown to balance both these qualities. For instance, Kiki observes the tradition of witches wearing black, but adorns her hair with a bright red bow. Kiki engages in other traditional methods, such as baking with a wood burner stove and flying her mother's old broom. So far, like I said, it's very much that idea of she's young, fun with vulnerabilities. She's isolated herself because she doesn't know anybody. She's still getting to know the city. She got to the city, she was full of wonder. Then she saw that everything's different. Like nobody's ever seen a witch before. Witches don't really exist in cities. They don't thrive in cities, and it's very much the fact of, oh, I was really way out my head, but I'm going to try my best. So she isolates herself. She doesn't really know anybody. She's hiding away. Whenever this boy that's interested in her comes to her, she shies away. She pretends she's not interested. She doesn't like him. She's like, oh, go away. You're bothering me, blah, blah, blah. He's only, again, trying to be friendly, trying to make friends, but it's that self-isolation, which, again, you should never really self-isolate, because that is when the struggle starts to come. That sort of the ideas of depression and anxiety and loss and loneliness start to come in, of like, because you are self-isolating yourself, you are on your own. And some people thrive in those situations, but most people don't. And Kiki, again, she works all the time. She doesn't, and then she only really talks to the people that she lives with, and then she talks to the people that she delivers to. But very much so, she hides herself away, and on the outside she tries to be the bright sort of youthful, but inside you can tell that she's very much the fact of, this is hard, this is difficult, have I made the right choice? And again, that leads to the fact of Kiki's loss of her witch powers, which is considered the worst crisis she has to face during the film. Her loss of flight reflects the harm dealt to Kiki by her self-doubts. This hardship causes Kiki to realise that being vulnerable does not always lead to failure, and can help her learn valuable lessons to better understand herself. Petrina Ranulkov also suggests that Jin's bond with Kiki represents the experiences she has as a child, and that once Kiki loses her powers to talk to Gigi, she becomes more lonely, which she does throughout the movie. Once she loses her confidence and loses her Jiminy Cricket type conscious character, she loses who she is, because she no longer has someone to talk to. So she self-isolates more. She feels more lonely, more self-doubt, and eventually, near to the end of the movie, she isn't the girl that she was at the start of the film. She is not a shell, because she doesn't go that far, but she is very lonely. And Gigi had served as the wiser voice to her, sort of her imaginary companion, so to speak, to Kiki, and she stopped being able to understand him the moment she struggles with self-doubt. According to Miyazaki himself, Gigi is meant to represent the immature side of Kiki, and her inability to talk to Gigi represents her newfound maturity at the end of the movie. In relation to Kiki's portrayal as a witch, some have drawn comparisons to historical or contemporary views on witches and witchcraft. The film incorporates some conversations from fairy tales, such as a black cat companion to Kiki, Kiki's use of a broom for flight, and her black dress. While girls with magical powers are common in Japanese television, Miyazaki wanted to stay away from various stereotypes generated from these shows, remarking that witchcraft has always merely being the means to fulfill the dreams of young girls. This stereotypical portrayal of witches is also shown in the older witch Kiki encounters while travelling to Kyoto. Kiki has also been compared to other companions in Miyazaki's films. While there are overt differences in demeanor between Kiki and San from Princess Mononoke, which I haven't watched yet, a character who is motivated by anger, both characters take control over their own lives. This theme of remarkable independence is also seen in Miyazaki's earlier works, such as Nausicaa, in Nausicaa Valley of the Wind, which, if you've heard my review on that one, I spit lyrical about how strong and powerful and independent Nausicaa is. Kiki is also compared to, I'm really going to butcher this name, Chihiro of Spirited Away, as they are both young girls attempting to seek independence without being rebellious. Both Chihiro and Kiki develop their independence with the help of their friends. Now, I haven't watched Spirited Away yet. That's still kind of far away for me before I get there. But I can see that. I can see the connection between Kiki and Nausicaa, the independence, the drive to be more than what you are. Yes, you're young. Yes, you're mature. Yes, it's very much the fact of people going to treat you like a child because you are a child. But it's still the standing up for what you believe in, and standing up for who you are as a person, your character, being like, this is who I am. I I'm Kiki. I am a witch. I am strong. I'm powerful. I am um, doing what's right for me, and it makes other people's lives better. I've made loads of friends. People are happy. The delivery service works. Gigi is my best friend and my confidant. And without Gigi, I feel lonely. And it's that acceptance of growing up. It's that acceptance of like going into the big city and be like, look, I have no idea what I'm doing. And one thing that a lot of us will find is the fact that when I was younger, I generally thought that adults knew what they were doing because adults seem to look like they know what they're doing. When I was younger, I never saw an adult that didn't know what to do. Because again, when you're young, you go to an adult. When you're in trouble or when you're scared or you're lost, you run to an adult and ask them for help because you assume because they're an adult, they know what they're doing. One of the biggest lies, though, is the fact that it's not until you become an adult you realise adults have no idea who they are or what they're doing. They just make it up as they go along. Um, and that is life, really, is the fact of nobody really knows who they are, what they're doing. Whether if you're really, really successful or you're not successful, the whole point of life is the fact of just to give it a go, just to try it, just to get out there, push yourself to do the things that scare you, to push yourself to do new adventures, meet new people, experience new things, and try your best at whatever it is you find yourself doing in life. And in the terms of Kiki, it's the fact of she was meant to go on a trip with her dad, still be young, still be a child, but the darkest, brightest, starriest midnight was coming, and she was 13 years old, and she just thought, okay, today's the day that I grow up, today's the day that I leave. And at 13 years old, she gets her mother's broom. It's old, but it's reliable, and she goes out to seek her fortune, and she does. And she has some struggles with self-doubt along the way, but still, she prevails. She meets new people. She makes new friends. She eventually comes out of her shell. She becomes a lot more less self-closed and more open. And yes, even though she still goes through that moment of going through the loneliness and going through the self-isolation, she still grows out of that. And at the end of the movie, we get to see her excelling. But just because, and again, I'm going to say this from personal experience, um, there are many moments in life, especially for myself, where you could go feeling that I know the path that I'm on or the direction that I'm going at is the way I'm meant to be going, um, and that you can go through life and get that moment of, oh my god, I have no idea what I'm doing. I have complete self doubt. I can't do this. We have panic attacks and we get anxious, but we get over them, and then we keep going, and then we might hit another hurdle, um, and again we might get that self doubt again. We might get that promotion and feel like, you know what, I can't do this. It's too much work. But as I said at the beginning, if there is a moment in life where you get a sense of fear, a sense that you can't do it, that is when you should be pushing hard against it, pushing back, be like, yes, I am terrified. Admit to yourself that you're terrified. Yes, I'm terrified. Say it out loud. I am terrified. It scares me. Self-affirm it to yourself that you're terrified. But you know what? Don't give up. Push. Push and push and push. And two things will happen. One, you'll either realize in yourself that I gave it a go, but it wasn't for me, and then you can walk away. But remember, you gave it a go. And because you tried it, there's no regret, there's no self-doubt, there's no moments of, oh, well, you know what? It could have worked, but I never tried it. There's none of that because you gave it a go, right? So there's nothing to worry about if it doesn't work out, at least you tried, right? Or, secondly, you could try, push back at the fear, and succeed. And then who knows where that will take you. Either way, you'll go down a different path. But at least in both ways, you will know that because you pushed and because you tried, right, that is enough. And that is the biggest sort of overall thoughts and feelings I can give, not just to this movie, not just to Kiki, but in general, is the fact of, at the end of this film, who Kiki is and who she becomes are the same person, but they are different. It shows a light on life. It shows a light that, yes, in this story, she's a 13-year-old girl, but she's going through the struggle of growth, which is what we all go through no matter how old you are, and that she prevails. And it's a sort of allegory that in life, you are going to go through hardship, you're going to go through moments of struggle, you're going to go through moments of vulnerability, of uncertainty, and even isolation and self doubt. But you should never lock yourself away. You should never hide yourself in your room. You should get up, find the thing that you love, find something that you enjoy, and pursue it, no matter what it is. I don't care what it is. If it makes you happy, pursue it. And hopefully, fingers crossed, you'll be successful. But you won't know until you try. You have to, and I'm not saying to grow up. What I'm saying is simply give it a go. Stand up, get dressed, make your bed, breathe, look in the mirror, tell yourself that you can do it, that you love yourself, repeat it 3 times because repetition is the best way you can remember something. Go out your front door and see what happens. See where the road takes you, as Bilbo say where the road leads. You never know until you step outside that door. That is my overall feelings of this movie, is the fact of it is a story of a young girl growing up, of independence, and that it's told beautifully, it's told wonderfully. The visuals are stunning. There are times where it's hard to believe this movie was made in 1989. This movie looks and feels very much a lot more newer, not just for the looks, but also for the theme and for the characters and the way the characters are. But I've said that again for all Ghibli movies so far, is the fact that they just seem more modern because they're dealing with topics that are very modern and very poignant today, which were important for the past. It's just a fact of only, I would say, as far as I'm aware, only Ghibli really dealt with these sort of stories, and that these are very stories and concepts that Disney and Pixar and DreamWorks and all the rest wouldn't really tend to deal with until a lot later on. So yeah, nothing to be surprised. Once again, Ghibli have knocked it out of the park. It's a wonderful movie. It's a very powerful, poignant film. And like I said, it means a lot more today than it did when it came out. But even so, that just really should say to you how great this movie is that it's so ahead of its time that it helps you to, at any age, to feel nostalgic, to relate, but also to make you feel like, yeah, I get those moments too. And if Kiki can do it, I can do it. Yeah, so that is my overall thoughts. Before we get to the end, as I'll always like to do whenever I do movie reviews, is I like to look at trivia. So I've done a bit of research and I've got some trivia that I would think that most people would find interesting. So first bit of trivia is, during the production phase, Hayao Miyazaki and his artist travelled to Sweden to research the film. The photographs they took of Stockholm and Visby formed the basis of the fictional city of Corico. The city also contains elements of Lisbon, Paris, San Francisco, and Milan. The story takes place in an alternative 1950s Europe where World War One and World War Two never happened. Hayao Miyazaki has been quoted saying that the fictional city of Kyoko has one side on the shores of the Mediterranean and the other on the Baltic Sea. Hayao Miyazaki didn't want to bore the audience during the film's end credits by using just the names. He set it up to be like a mini sequel so that the audience would leave the cinema feeling happy, which it does. And as I explained, I like that Ghibli do this, that they add extra scenes at the end during the credits of like the movie doesn't just end, like you get to see what happens next. And I did at the end of it. I felt happy knowing that even though the ending felt a bit abrupt, I could see that Kiki went on and she got a lot more confident in herself and her delivery service got more successful and that she got friends. I only really know that she managed to get friends was because the end credits, I got to see during the credits that she was playing with Tombo and she was playing with all the other kids and that she was having fun and she was flying and flying perfectly as well. So she'd regained that confidence and it kind of gave me a moment within myself of like, it's nice to see But more importantly, it's nice to see that Kiki's going to be okay. Which I know it sounds silly, but just knowing the fact of that she's gone through this struggle, she's managed to get back on her feet, and that she's doing well, and that she's going to be okay. Even though I didn't need to know that, to know that, and to know that's how the movie ends, sweetens the deal for me. Knowing that she's going to be okay, and that I don't need to see a sequel. I don't need to see another story with Kiki in, because I know internally Kiki's going to be all right, and that's lovely. Like, how many times can you watch an animated film, or um, even any sort of film or TV show, where you can sit there and go, the kid's going to be all right? I can't think of many. I'm sure you could probably think of. I can't think of many, but it's a lovely sentiment of like, they're going to be okay. There's no need to worry about them. I don't have to. I will watch this film again, but I don't have to, because I know she's going to be okay. That's lovely. Really, really lovely. Another sort of bit of trivia was that originally panned by fans of the original Japanese version, Disney later re-released a second version of their English dub. Unlike the original 1998 dubbing, this 2010 reversion has gone back and removed several ad-lib lines from the American sound effects, and added soundtracks and several comedic lines added by Phil Hartman. This revised dub is considered more faithful than the original 1998 English dubbing, but the sound mix is notably more filtered, with moments like Kiki's screams sounding like they're passing through a fan. I didn't notice that. Now I don't know if I watched the 2010 reversion or the original 1998 version. I'm not sure. I didn't notice this as I was going through, and as I was getting my notes together to record the review, and sort of getting the notes ready for the trivia. I didn't notice this, but I found it really interesting, because I want to see if anybody else has, if they've only watched the 1998 version or if they've watched the 2010 version, if they notice the difference. I didn't, because I didn't know this was a thing until after I watched the film. But that's a question. Does anybody notice that difference? Does any notice if the film, if the sound mix is noticeably more filtered? That sort of thing. Let me know in the comments down below or on Twitter. And then finally, the dialogue during the scene in which Kiki drinks coffee changes the beverage to hot chocolate in the Disney release. Disney thought it was inappropriate for children to drink coffee. The video subtitle art also mentioned hot chocolate, although the Japanese koi, Kohii, coffee is audible on the soundtrack. Which is kind of interesting that Disney would think it was inappropriate for a child to drink coffee. Even though that, yeah, kids shouldn't be having that much caffeine, but I know kids that drink coffee. Weird children who have briefcases and wear suits, but even so. Um, yeah, I just thought that was interesting. Was like Disney thought, nah, kids shouldn't be drinking coffee. Hot chocolate, which I agree. I'd rather have hot chocolate than coffee. But yeah, that is it for trivia, and that here we are at the end of Kiki's Delivery Service. This has been another wonderful experience with Ghibli. I am now in 1989, and I think the next one, actually, here we go. Let's Google it quickly now. Studio Ghibli movies in order. So I'm in 1989 now. The next movie is in 1991, only yesterday. So that will be the next Ghibli movie that I watch, and after that is the one that possibly was the first Ghibli movie I've ever seen in my life, which I watched by accident, which is Porco Rosso, which I've never watched that movie all the way through. I've only ever seen it in parts, but what I saw stuck with me and I enjoyed. So I'm looking forward to going back to that one. But before we get to that, it's 1991, sorry, only yesterday, so I'm looking forward to it. But so far, my Ghibli adventure has been incredible. Nausicaa, still the best, and then you've got Laputa, Castle in the Sky, Grave of the Fireflies, My Neighbor Totoro, and now Kiki's Delivery Service. Have all been a 10 out of 10 so far, and I'm sure, I have no doubt, it is going to stay that way. So I'm really, really excited. One film that I'm quite excited for to watch, apart from Porco Rosso, is Princess Mononoke. I've heard a lot of things about it. and from what I've heard, I feel like I'm going to have to read a few books to do with death and life and stuff like that. Um, so I've got some time before I get there. Same with Spirited Away. I feel like there's some things I need to read and research first before I jump into those films. I won't go into any details what they are because I want to save them for when we get to there. But that's just the feeling I have with these films so far, is the fact of I feel like I need to do some self exploration and self research first before I get to those. But I've got a way before I get there. But I'm very, very excited. But yeah, that is all she wrote. That is the end. Sorry to say, but thank you very, very much for joining me in this review. It's a wonderful treat to be back podcasting. I have really missed doing this. I took a long break away, about 2 months off, but it's nice to finally be back. So thank you very much if you are a recurring listener. If you're a new listener and you've gotten this far, again, thank you very, very much. Don't forget to share this episode with your friends on any platform or with anybody you think who will enjoy it. I've been your host, Luke the Human. You've been listening to the Nerdstalgic podcast, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye bye.